attendance at the seminars that we're having in Gita Nagari, something that I really look forward to, and I'm paying the price for not being there. In dollars, that comes up to $670. That my airplane ticket from Toronto there and back costs. So, and just very, very briefly, the reason that I'm not able to come is I got some kind of bite. And when I was in Mayapur, that became infected, and I had very serious abscess here. I had to have an operation for that, general anesthetic operation, and up until now I'm standing. Let's see how long I'll be standing, or at least I'll have some breaks. But it was something that was quite dangerous and merited for me to stay here. I missed Janmashtami, Vyas Puja in Hungary, something I've only done once in the last 20 years, again because of sickness. So, Hare Krishna, Romapad Maharaj, all the Vaishnavas, my humble apologies, but this is the situation. It is out of my control. All right, Varnasrama. In case you don't know, I'm Sivarama Swami. I've been in this movement for the past 45 years. And Varnasrama is not really it's not my thing. As a sannyasi, should be a socially dead person. I should be traveling, preaching, and writing. But actually, I spend most of my time dealing with farming, household affairs. I do preaching, Gurukula, Goshala, all of these things. And of course, my concentration for the last 40 years in this movement has been more or less book distribution. And in studying Srila Prabhupada's books, studying Srila Prabhupada's instructions, I became increasingly aware of what Prabhupada himself had said, that half of his mission remained incomplete. What is that half? Finishing the Bhagavatam? Prabhupada said no. Varnasrama. He wanted to establish Varnasrama. And what really caught my attention was actually in the movie, which I watch every year, the final lesson, Srila Prabhupada, when he's dictating Bhagavatam, 10th canto Bhagavatam, is talking about the importance of Varnasrama. So that clicked with me, and I felt, here I am, Srila Prabhupada's disciple. It's my duty to try to research what it is that Srila Prabhupada wanted and to try to fulfill that. So for the last 2-3 years, I've been really digging in. I've been making presentations of what I understand. Recently, we wrote one book. I penned one book. I wrote it, but the substance of the book was from a Varnasrama committee of devotees in the Hungarian Yatra. And actually, Varnasrama has become sort of the major vision statement of the Hungarian Yatra for the last 3 years, and we're taking progressive steps in that regard. So that's why I'm speaking about Varnasrama, and I will not be seeing devotees here in Tirupati who are looking at me and establishing whose Varna is, which generally comes up in devotees' minds. Well, what's my Varna? My Kshatriya, my Brahmin, my Shudra. But rather, for me, Varnasrama is a much greater topic, although that's certainly part of it, and it's a fundamental part. What is Varnasrama? What is our Varna? And that is according to our social and spiritual status. What are our rights and obligations, whether we're living in a city, whether we're living on a farm, and understanding those and adhering to those assists us in advancing in Krishna consciousness, gives a formal legal structure for a society so that we actually do become the international society for Krishna consciousness, because we're celebrating ISKCON's 50th. What does society mean? International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Are we really a society? We're a religious organization, but I have one gentleman in here who's shaking his head. If we're a society, tell me what our social model is. What model are we following? I travel in different parts of the world. Devotees do things very differently. Certain philosophical things we have common understanding on. We know when Mongol Arctic starts, and we know what a morning program is. There are a lot of other social issues on which devotees have very, very different opinions. Say, for instance, here in India to the United States, and UK and Europe is in between. So what is our social model? And what is not only our social model, but as members of as preachers, when we're talking to people, I know to me the question comes up quite often. If you got all the answers to the questions of life, then how would you run the world? What's your social model? What would you do? Because right now we're trying to run ISKCON, and some people think that we could be doing it better. But how would we run the world? What is our social model for the whole world? What do we say? Should it be democracy? Should it be some kind of authoritarian rule? What is the basis? What is the standard? And of course, I think for the most part, devotees will say Varnasrama, because everyone's heard about it. What does it mean? And there's a lot of different opinions on what Varnasrama means. Obviously, you're just hearing mine, which is not the absolute truth. It's my understanding. And to be very, very honest, the more I study the subject, the more my understanding grows, expands, and it's becoming for me very, very obvious. I wish I knew a lot of the things that I know now about Varnasrama, because Varnasrama means human psychology, means people's nature, means people's abilities. If I knew that now, earlier, what I knew now, because as a temple president, as a GBC, as a guru, I may have made different decisions and given different types of advice, not based upon that I'm treating all devotees as transcendentalists and Mahabhagatas who can do anything and everything, and Krishna wants to empower them, but I'm also taking into consideration their conditioned natures, because at least I, for one, am a conditioned soul. When you're conditioned, you have to take conditions into consideration. All right. At the end of each of these presentations, and I really need to get on with this, I leave it to Romapad Maharaj to really decide how he wants to cut these presentations in. This is an introduction, and thereafter I'll try to present another 3 PowerPoints, so 4 altogether. My thumb is down. 4 PowerPoints altogether, and we'll send them all separately so they can be downloaded. Maharaj can play them as he so wills. I would have made more longer presentations had I been there. I had coming on to 4.5, I think 5 hours. I hope this is we'll be able to send everything away on the internet to you all. At the end of each presentation, you'll see a book that I was going to bring. One advantage of flying from Europe to USA is intercontinental flights. I could have had a lot of luggage. I'm only coming for a few days, so I don't need to bring any personal luggage. I can't send these books. But this first book in our Varnasrama series, which is a series, I'm on the second one. It's an introduction, and it talks about the Varnas. The second one is ashram. We have a plan for making other ones, such as economy, social structure, or what one would call politics. All of these things are there when we're talking about society. By training, I'm an engineer. I know very little about social engineering. I can do other types of engineering, but social engineering I'm not trained in. But I'm trying to learn. Srila Prabhupada, from Acharyas, Manu Samhita, how does that fit into today? Okay, so I'd like to introduce Adi. Look into the camera. This is Adi Guru Prabhu. He's from England, so you're going to hear some Queen's English. And he's helping me. As my Chicago presentation, I'll speak and he will read what you see. He'll read it a little fast, but that's okay because you're seeing everything anyway. And this is about as dark as we have here in this beautiful temple, which got a view, onto Lord Ananta, who's present here in the form of a wonderful hill. Introduction, qualification for Varnasrama. And the following points is what we're going to touch on here.
1. Every practice requires a qualification. 2. The qualification for following Varnasrama is to cultivate the qualities of human beings. 3. These qualities are 30 in number and include the 9 limbs of bhakti. 4. Those who do not cultivate these qualities are outside Varnasrama Dharma and cannot understand the need for it. 5. The first step to Varnasrama is to know and cultivate these 30 qualities.
I'm standing in your way, ladies. I don't know if you, because this is more or less where I'm going to be standing all the time. All right. Let's start with the first one, which is...
Every practice requires a qualification.
The Sanskrit word, you've heard it a lot, said it a lot, is called adhikar. And we say, Revati Raman Das Adhikari. He has the adhikar for Krishna consciousness. It's already implicit there in the name. And Krishna talks about adhikar in Srimad Bhagavatam. And just before Adi reads this verse, the main emphasis of what I'm going to talk about today comes from Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is our Param Purana. It's our supreme evidence. And Bhagavatam directly speaks in 7 chapters about Varnasrama. 7th canto, Narada Muni, 5 chapters, the Lord, Krishna to Uddhava, 2 chapters in the 11th canto. Other chapters, specifically those talking about modes of material nature, and also speak about Varnasrama, but these 7 chapters are exclusively dedicated to the Bhagavatam, and that's a good percentage. 7 out of 180, that's like about 3-4% of the Bhagavatam talks about Varnasrama. And it's one of the 10 subjects of Bhagavatam: Atra, Sarga, Visarga, Stanam, Posham, Udaya. So the maintenance, the sustenance of living entities, Varnasrama is that part. And Krishna talks about this adhikar. What does he say?
Steadiness in one's own position, one's own qualification, is declared to be actual piety, whereas deviation from one's own position, one's own qualification, is considered impiety. In this way, the two are definitely ascertained.
So, what you're qualified for, when you act according to your qualification, that is called piety. And when you act contrary to your qualification, or outside of your qualification, that it becomes impiety. On an individual level, and also on a social level. Now, this is not news to everybody, but it is news to the world around us, that what is the purpose of a society? The purpose of society is to elevate humanity. In other words, it's piety. But unfortunately, one of the so-called cornerstones of modern education is that anyone can be trained to do anything. And just go to university. In fact, everyone's forced to go to university. You're considered to be a misfit if you're not educated and have some kind of high education. I spent 6 years in university, and I know how many of us actually really belong in the university. and who necessarily didn't. So modern society is about consumerism, it's about sense gratification, it's about materialism. It's not about spiritual development, it's about economic development. And more about this later. Thakur Bhaktivinoda explains this verse in Krishna Samhita in the following way.
From animal life to human life and from regulative principles to attachment, there are many levels of qualifications, adhikar. The performance of duties according to a person's qualification is called piety, and deviation from those duties is called impiety.
So, this idea of qualification it's just inherent. It's inherent in the way we work, it's inherent in our lives, it's inherent in Krishna consciousness. What is the qualification for bhakti? Ado Shraddha. You have to have faith. What is the qualification to achieve prema? You have to have bhava. What's the qualification in order to get the real taste in Krishna consciousness? You have to be nishtha. You have to be fixed in devotional service. So everything has a qualification. And I raise and introduce Varnasrama with this concept of qualification because you have to be qualified to both practice Varnasrama and also understand it. Why not? It's not just something that you automatically do. Therefore, the issue is not what's my Varna. The issue is, are we qualified to understand or even accept what our particular Varna is. And here Thakur Bhaktivinoda says, from animal life to human life, from regulated principles to attachment, many levels of qualification, so many levels of qualification. All right, and this idea that every practice requires some qualification, and similarly, to practice Varnasrama, one also has to be qualified. Not a real mystery what it is, but let's go to the next one.
The qualification for following Varnasrama is to cultivate the qualities of human beings.
Surprise, you have to be a human for Varnasrama. But, and of course that's also not a surprise, because Prabhupada mentioned it, humans are not just those things with 2 legs and 2 arms. That doesn't necessarily make somebody human. Human means you have human qualities. You identify a thing, yatrayal lakshanam proktam, Narada Muni says. So you identify everything according to the lakshana. And the lakshana is not necessarily arms, legs, and 1 head and no tail, but lakshana means qualities. And this is what we're going to study here. Now, this is part of a verse, and I've just edited out the repetitive nature that you find in this verse. And Adi, let's have it.
These are the general principles to be followed by all human beings. O King Yudhisthira, these 30 qualifications must be acquired in the human form of life. Simply by acquiring these qualifications, one can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
In the 7th canto, 11th chapter starts with Varnasrama, and this is verse 8 to 12. These 3 dots, what you see here, the rest of the verse fits into there. But what you do see here are the following, repetition. General principles to be followed by all human beings. These 30 qualifications must be acquired in the human form of life. Simply by acquiring these qualifications, one can satisfy the Supreme Lord. So you have to acquire them, you have to perfect them, you have to cultivate these qualities. And these qualities, as we'll see in the following section, are what actually classifies someone as being a human being. You have to have the lakshana, you have to have the qualification. And it's quite extraordinary that Srila Prabhupada 3 times repeats the same thing in one verse. You have to have it, you have to have it, you have to have it. If you don't have it, you have to cultivate it. Okay, and the next.
These qualities are 30 in number and include the 9 limbs of bhakti.
We're going to be reading this verse. It's quite lengthy. There are 30 qualities. 9 of them are Nava Anga Bhakti, are the 9 limbs of devotional service. And the other 21 are Dharma. are principles of Dharma. They are religious principles, qualities that every human being has to have in order really to put in motion Varnashram in their lives and Varnashram in a greater society. And right now, actually, we want a pilot model society, namely the Krishna consciousness movement. So it's very interesting that Narada Muni, 5,000 years ago, was making the same statement. This is being spoken to Yudhishthira Maharaj, and I'll get back a little later to the history of how this is spoken. And Narada Muni is saying that the 9 limbs of bhakti is compulsory for everyone in the Varnashram system. Every human being has to Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam, everyone is. How much faith they have, how well they do it, how purely they do it, it's all right, but they not all have to do it. Just like when Srila Prabhupada was asked, Prabhupada, can there be Christians or Muslims in a society of devotees? Prabhupada said yes, but they have to chant 16 rounds. That's all right. So, and these other qualities, well, and of course we'll get to that because this becomes one of the objections. Well, we're transcendental to that. We're beyond that. We're beyond all of these other principles of Dharma. After all, we are devotees. But we'll see what Srila Prabhupada says about that. Okay, let's read this verse, and you'll see first 21 will be principles of Dharma, last 9 will be the 9 limbs of bhakti.
These are the general principles to be followed by all human beings. Truthfulness, mercy, austerity, observing fasts on certain days of the month, bathing twice a day, tolerance,
You
discrimination.
can see that the 4 legs of Dharma, become the first 4.
Discrimination.
Truthfulness, mercy, austerity, cleanliness. Go ahead.
Discrimination between right and wrong, control of the mind, control of the senses, non-violence, celibacy, charity, reading of scripture, simplicity, satisfaction, rendering service to saintly persons, gradually taking leave of unnecessary engagements, observing the futility of the unnecessary activities of human society, remaining silent and grave and avoiding unnecessary talk, considering whether one is the body or the soul, distributing food equally to all living entities, both men and animals, seeing every